Did you know that the United States tried to compete with the Tour de France? Well, at least one man did. Donald Trump somehow got involved in a race to help compete in America with the Tour de France, calling it the Tour de Trump, spanning over 800 miles in 10 stages, starting in Albany, New York, finishing in Atlantic City, covering 5 different states, featuring the likes of stars like Greg LeMond, who had just won the Tour de France. The race featured dramatic moments, challenging weather, and was won by a rider from Norway. But what happened to this race? Why is it still not around? Join us today as we dive into the Tour de Trump and cycling in America. Today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge as we dive into the Tour de Trump. So in the cycling world, we all know about the Tour de France. It's like the biggest race across the world. Now it's only in France, but it's known throughout the world. It's the biggest cycling race there is. But there's some other races that are pretty big. There's the Giro d'Italia, which is held in Italy, the Dana Española, which is held in Spain, and those are known as the Grand Tours, the 3 majors. Just like in tennis and golf, they have their majors. But all the top races are in Europe. That doesn't mean we don't have races here in the United States. We have the Tour of California, which is one of the most prestigious U.S. races attracting top international competition. We have the Tour of Utah, the Tour of Gila, which is held in New Mexico. And those are 3 of the most premier professional stage races. And maybe it's because our races don't sound as pretty as the Tour de France, the Tour of Utah. I mean, that doesn't sound engaging, right? And it's a simple reason why it's more popular in Europe than it is here, because cycling is more common in Europe. Cycling is woven into the daily life and nationality of some cities. There are cities in Europe that you cannot get to with a car. At most, you can have a moped, but many use bikes as their main form of transportation. So cycling is woven into it, whereas in America, cars are woven into what we have today. Most of us have to take a car to work, have to take a car to the grocery store, have to take a car to school. Anything we do, we have to take the car to. Whereas in Europe, you can do all those things by walking or riding a bike. So that transition really is probably why there's more support for racing across Europe than here. Also, it started earlier. The Tour de France and were kind of started there before they came here. At the time they were starting in the 1800s, we were still, in the midst of finding our own independence and having the Civil War. And while we were doing that, Europe had wars as well, but, they were focusing on growing tours and things. That's why a lot of things in Europe are older than they are here. It's simple as that. But that doesn't mean we can't jump into the game. But there was a race attempting to go after the Tour de France, and that was the Tour de Trump. Now, this didn't start with Trump, and it didn't start with cycling. It actually started with a basketball commentator named Billy Packer and a TV reporter named John Tesh. In 1987, Tesh had to cover the Tour de France for CBS, as it was so big that it was being covered in the 80s by America. And it was suggested to Parker that America needed a grand cycling event, just like the Tour de France. When you go over to these international competitions and see all the support and joy that they have there and everything that surrounds it, you're like, okay, this makes sense. We should have this in America. Now, neither of these men had any experience with cycling, but Parker saw it as a major event that could be tied to his businesses in Atlantic City. His first idea was the Tour de Jersey, going from Manhattan to Atlantic City. Now, and his initial idea was to go to Atlantic City Casino's executives with a concept, but he stalled out. But he did approach Mark Edis, the executive at the Trump Casino, who quickly arranged a meeting with Donald Trump in Manhattan. Now, Trump hadn't ridden bicycles since childhood and had no cycling background and was skeptical, but saw the promotional appeal. He saw CBS covering it. He saw the crowds there. He thought this could be something that could be exciting. So he challenged Parker to secure the city permits to test his commitment, and Parker succeeded, and Trump agreed to be the primary sponsor. But the event would have to carry his name, and that's how it became the Tour de Trump. And Trump actually announced the race in late 1988 as a direct rival to the Tour de France, aiming to elevate American cycling, and he put up a $250,000 purse to cover the prize money. That'd be over $500,000 today. But it was still just a third of what the Tour de France was doing. But it was a start. And with Trump's branding at front and center, he believed his name would attract top talent and global attention, stating that a lot of racers came because of the name, and that this would likely make this the equivalent to the Tour de France. Now, the race was set to start on May 5th, 1989, stretching 835 miles over 10 stages across the northeastern United States, starting in Albany, New York, and finishing in front of Trump Casino in Atlantic City. Now, the stages would include flat sprints, rolling hills, challenging mountain terrain, particularly through Pennsylvania and Maryland, and the final stage would be a time trial in Atlantic City. Now, invitations were sent out to race organizers aiming to attract the top international squads and American squads, and the race would include 114 riders from 15 different countries, and included Greg LeMond, who just won the Tour de France, giving it instant credibility, and he was American. Now, there were no specific qualifications to get into the race. Teams were accepted based on reputation, international standings, and organizers' desires for competition. And the race itself would be covered by NBC, who agreed to broadcast 6 hours of the event, a rarity at the time because this was pre-satellite. So you had about 5 channels total, and to have one of them cover your event for 6 hours was huge. It really gave it credibility in America. Now it got off with a bang, having an individual trial through Albany, New York, won by Vyacheslav Kamov of Russia, who will actually go on to win stage 1 as well. And stage 1 was Albany, New York to New Paltz, New York. Stage 2 was New Paltz. Next stage was Allentown, PA to Reading, PA. Next stage was Reading, PA to Harrisburg, PA. Then Harrisburg, PA to Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. to Richmond, Virginia. And then Richmond, Virginia to Atlantic City. In Atlantic City, they held another individual time trial, which held the only win by a U.S. rider and Ronkielv, but he was not the overall winner. The winner ended up being Dag-Otto Lauritzen of Norway, who ended up winning stage 4, 5, 7, and 8, winning the most stages out of any rider with a total time of 33 hours, 28 minutes, and 9 seconds over the 10-day race. And the top Americans in the race ended up being Ronkielv, who finished 6th, and Greg LeMond finished 10th. And Lauritzen took home $50,000, over $150,000 in today's winnings. And the media was surrounded at the final event. Across the boardwalk, there was television, cameras everywhere. Trump himself presided over the closing ceremonies. And it looked like it was a huge success, as it was flashy and spectacle, and it really showed that some of the best riders were there to compete. And the race was covered by NBC and other medias in 5 different continents and over 100 different countries globally. And the next year, they actually expanded the scope, as they started in Delaware and finished in Boston, as the route was designed to go through even more states and major cities to rival even more the Tour de France in both size and prestige. But despite the success in the media buzz, after this, Trump withdrew his name from the event as the main sponsor. Now they were quickly able to secure another sponsor in the DuPont company. If you don't know the DuPont company, they do a lot of chemicals that we use every single day, but they also sponsored Jeff Gordon's car back in the 90s and early 2000s. So you probably remember them in their logo from that in NASCAR. But they wanted to sponsor another kind of race form, and they renamed it Tour DuPont. And the event actually continued to grow, running until 1996. A young Lance Armstrong actually won the final 2 editions of this race. And after the 1996 race, DuPont ended their sponsorship, as the DuPont family was going through a crisis where John DuPont, a member of the family that owned the company, had been arrested for murder of a wrestler, Dave Schultz, and cast a shadow over the DuPont name. And you may have seen this in the documentary and movie called Foxtrotter. So they dropped out as a sponsor, and they struggled to find another sponsor. There was legal disputes from Billy Packer and Mike Plant, who sued each other over the rights for the event and the profits. And because of this dispute, it made it hard to find another sponsor to be able to put on the race, and it fizzled out and it was not held again. And it never really was able to reach the level of a Tour de France. Major cyclists from across the world had come to compete. It just wasn't the main race. Sometimes if you're not the main one, you get left behind. And cycling in America, at least race cycling, is not what it is in Europe. It may never be, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy it here too. Cycling is one of the greatest activities, one of the greatest exercises you can do. And I encourage you, if you want, to get out there and cycle. And maybe you can start the next tour in America. I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you want more cycling content, check out the Roadman Cycling Podcast, where you will get tips, strategies, insights of how to use cycling as a tool for health and happiness and longevity, as they talk with world tour riders, authors, and academics every week to give you all you might need to know in the cycling world. I'll put a link in the description below for you to check them out. And if you enjoyed today's episode and there's a topic you want us to cover, all you got to do is email us at dailysportshistory@gmail.com. Give us a topic, and I will get that done personally for you and give you a shout out at the end of the episode. I look forward to hearing from you, and come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.